There was a moment of molestation where, celebrating my birthday, there was touching under the table as happy birthday was being said. In January of 23, I was at an event where I said to the 60 people in the room, I'm like, I'm at a point in my life where if I don't get this out now, it's never coming out.
My story is so crazy and unique that that's always what happens. People are like, man, my trauma is nothing compared to yours. I'm like, it's not about the comparison.
Right.
It's about your experience and understanding how that can shape you and tapping into the collective wisdom of other people.
I very much in the last handful of years came to terms with the childhood sexual abuse that happened in my childhood. For years, up until my last birthday, I just loathed that focus and that attention. I never really knew why.
What's going on, everybody? You know what we do here by now on Flipping the Lid. We love to jump in. We love to go deep. We love to tell the real, raw stories of some of the most significant, successful people on this planet. Today, we have someone that's no different. He's been a lifelong champion for small business. He's a family man. He's somebody that understands the importance of sleep. He also understands how to create space for leadership. And in his latest book, he goes deep on that. I've had an opportunity to interact with this man a couple of times, and what I can tell you is that the empathy and compassion that flows through him is real. He's been through it, and he's done the work. He's flipped open his lid, he's jumped inside, and he's unpacked things to put him in a position to continue to move in life. And so I'm extremely excited to have you here with us today, Jeff.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor to have been invited. Had a blast with you on the Instagram live show, and looking forward to digging deeper with you today. So thank you.
Man, I'm looking forward to it as well. This is it's going to be incredible today. And here's the thing. I only ask one question to every guest here, right? It's the only question that I ask every single guest is because I introduced you at the high level based on my interactions with you, what I know about you. But who are you in your words?
Oh. In the time and space right now, I'm a man finding himself again.
Wow. That's deep. Yeah. That's profound. That's also extremely vulnerable. And I appreciate that. What does finding yourself mean? And can you give us a little insight into your current state?
Yeah. I talk about it in the book. We talked about it on the live feed. I very much in the last handful of years came to terms with the childhood sexual abuse that happened in my childhood. Mm-hmm. The last year or so, I've decided I'm the guy that's been called to talk about this. I'm the guy that's been called to share this because it's not something that gets shared. I mean, and I always want to preface this, and I'll probably say it a couple times, man. I don't want to win the trauma balance of scales with anybody, right? If you have something that has reframed your brain and your soul and you feel like you've been robbed of something, then that is your feelings, and there's no reason to get into a contest, and we don't need to weigh it out. It's how it's framed you. But I feel as though I'm been called and I've got the shoulders to stand in this position and fill this gap for others that have this wound in their chest that they cannot close. And if they can see somebody like me, you're stereotypical. I like to joke, I'm kind of like a closet redneck. Like the next few weeks here in PA, man, in the middle of the weeks, I got it blocked out of my schedule to get in the woods and scope out my deer hunting spots. My F-250 truck's in the mechanic shop right now. You talk about going through a time. I had two opportunities to sell that truck and make $5,000. And last week I found out I got to dump $7,000 into it. The $12,000 swing, right? Like there were two people delivered, I think, by God to say, maybe Jeff, it's time to sell this truck. And I didn't listen to what was put in front of me or recognize it. Lesson learned. But I'm that guy, right? And I think that, and I've always been that guy, but I've been this guy hiding in plain sight for a long time, and there's no more hiding. And so I'm figuring out what that looks like fully and completely to really not hide. Yeah. Where every action supports that. Because it's, it's tough. It's tough to pull that back.
It is tough. This is why you're on the show, my friend. I mean, look at how deep you went, how vulnerable you got right out of the gate. And as you know, we're in a process to normalize as many of these conversations as possible. one of the things that hit me in what you just said is healing that wound inside people's chest. You may or may not know this, but one of the nicknames that's been given to me is that I'm a heart surgeon without a blade. And it's to go inside and do just what you're describing through whatever the trauma is. I want to acknowledge your own situation, but I also really want to compliment you for your ability to recognize the tendency for our world to compare traumas. Mm-hmm. And how quickly people dismiss the power of their own story, their own lesson. And whether it's a big T or a little T trauma, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is that we can understand the lessons we can extract from our own experiences and become intentional in how we apply them moving forward. Obviously my story is so crazy and unique that that's always what happens. People are like, man, my trauma is nothing compared to yours. I'm like, it's not about the comparison.
Right.
It's about your experience and understanding how that can shape you and tapping into the collective wisdom of other people. So I really wanted to honor you for calling that into attention so quickly in our conversation, because I agree with you. I'd like to start right where you did. And I'd like to go back, if you're willing, to your childhood trauma, to the sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily want to get into the details of what happened and why, because I don't know that that's necessarily as relevant.
Yeah.
But what I would like to understand is what intellectual and emotional narratives were created within you during that experience and that time of your life? And what did that cause you to do over the course of the next couple of decades?
Mm. Yeah. The details, I'll be honest, I don't know that I'm there to share yet, because it's rough and it's violent. The last couple weeks, month, I've been really kind of trying to dig deep, because as I said earlier, if I'm going to not hide in plain sight anymore, I at least have to organize and stack all of those evil actions and get them on paper and then put it away. Right. Kind of like that box on the shelf of those mementos and those memories and those moments in life that you don't want to get rid of. They're happy memories. Right. I can't get rid of these things, but I can at least put them on a piece of paper. And my feeling is in that exercise, it gets them out of my heart and out of my head. Mm-hmm. Right. And in that exercise, I actually just, I'll answer the question here in a moment about intellectual and emotional. I just realized the other day, I remembered, because some of the stuff has been hidden away, and you mentally forget it, mm-hmm. right? Emotionally forget it. But there was a moment of molestation as our families went out, and this was a friend of our family, not a family member, a friend of our family, where celebrating my birthday, there was touching under the table as happy birthday was being sang. And I, for years, even up until my last birthday, I just loathed that focus and that attention. And I never really knew why. In the last month, I uncovered it. And so emotionally and intellectually, what have I done? Well, I've responded negatively in those ways. I got to try to lead that differently. We don't really celebrate birthdays in my family, and I've led that. Subconsciously, I've led that. And I don't want that for my sons, and I don't want that for my wife. Birthdays should be fun. You should celebrate them. I now understand it. So emotionally, that's been a response over the decades. I've really come to tap in that you got, three brains working. You get your mind, you get your heart, and you get your gut. And, obviously that heart mind had a massive wound blown through it. Even the gut, the intuition of I'm in this bad place. Why can't I get myself out of this?
Yep.
That got trampled, right? Jeff, it's bad to go down in that basement and play Duck Hunt and Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo. It's bad to go screw around with coding on that computer in the back room. And it was just off. That gut intuition was just off. And, I referenced it about my truck, right? Man, that's a gut intuition. The intellectual brain's I'm not going to sell this truck. I can't go replace this truck for $25,000 right now.
Yeah.
Because it's a classic old school Ford F2. Well, not old school, but that mid 90s era.
What year is it? Because I love F2. I love trucks, and I love Ford trucks.
It's a 96 F250 XLT.
Beautiful.
Crew cab, short bed. Yeah. It's a,
that era is highly sought after right now too.
Well, it is. And that's why I say you really can't replace what I have for that dollar. And here, again, if I were maybe 3 months ahead in my journey of really reconnecting to myself, I might have jumped at that 20. I probably would jump at that 25 grand. I've been told to jump at that 25 grand because twice 2 people were put in front of me. And, just another lesson. But that lesson, I'm not going to beat myself up because that lesson isn't that basement. And like in the pre-show, you said, is there a question I'm going to ask? I might challenge you. And I almost said, that's fine, man. No sweat. Because nothing in my life is that basement anymore. Nothing. And that's what I would share with everybody listening and watching is you can't forget this stuff because it's heavy. You carry it with you. It's evil. It's awful. I get it. But so little, if anything, you're going to meet in your life going forward is that moment that changed you entirely.
I want to honor you as well and just say that I'm extremely proud of what you've uncovered in the last month. As someone who helps people identify and remove or transform the trash from their past, the reality of it is until you get to the source of those associated cellular memories, you don't actually start to transform them, escape them, and remove them. And it makes complete sense. The association of self-preservation, protection, and armor that would have existed while you're being celebrated as happy birthday, while there's something that's happening underneath the table that no one else is aware of.
Yep.
Right? Like the complete shame and blame cycle that's associated with that, the knowing that that's not what you want or what you like, and the ripple effect of that through generations, right? That is real. And so I'm really, again, grateful for 1, the fact that you went there, 2, that you're doing the work that's required, and 3, that you're so vulnerable and open about those associated patterns. I'm going to shift the topic a little bit, and I'm going to stick on the truck for just a second, because it is really interesting how we get attachment to certain things, and we get attachment to certain physical things that might represent some freedom, some expression of self, some pride or ego in some component, right? And we hold on to those things, even though they're just things that, to your point, you can't replace for 25 grand. But at the same time, you're given 2 opportunities in front of you to let it go.
Yeah.
This is one example. And I'll tell you that part of my lessons in life are I went from having a detached arm to being completely detached emotionally and in many other ways from other areas of my life, to now understanding this healthy model of detachment and surrender to what's right in front of me, right? It's kind of been this full evolutionary cycle, but I've dealt with attachment in lots of different ways that were unhealthy for me, whether it was to money or physical material things. And often attachment is coming from a place of control and self-preservation. It's still connected to that armor, right? Like 100%. What can I hold on to? What can I protect? What can I maintain? What can I keep? Because fear of loss is really what's associated on the other side if we let go of it. What are we missing out on?
Yeah.
So how has this concept of attachment played a role in your life outside of the truck?
I'll say it is, you talked about how it is really about control. That's really where it's manifested. And, it's manifested largely in negative ways where it's got to be my way. Right. And then it turns into, well, how can you not understand that my way is the good way? My way is the best way. Right. And, even I'll even be honest. I think it's to a point at one point going back as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, control to the point of, manipulation, where it's like, I know I want this outcome and I know I can get others to go along with it. And so let's make that happen that way. Let's present my outcome in this way that I know people will fall into and move around. you know.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in a way I missed the calling in life to be an attorney and to be somebody who can debate, but I don't know why that is. Because I do enjoy the, the, the debate. I do enjoy extracting perspective. I do enjoy learning new information and what if this and what if that parts of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely that attachment to control was big. And going back to the three different minds, when your heart and gut mind are blown apart as a child, you got to quickly evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always a leader as a kid. I was that kid that in a group of four, if the other three kids weren't working, it didn't matter because I didn't want more negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And if the other kids came
There's
along,
so much truth to that.
yeah, if the other kids came along, so be it. But I just didn't want to go. I guess in a way, I didn't want even more repercussions in life because I had enough of that going on.
And it was survival, honestly, for you at that time. I mean, no different than when my arm was ripped off and a whole variety of different things came into my world. Here's what I can tell now. When I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I shut off mental pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain for 20 to 25 years, and I didn't even know it. Right. And so I healed physically, but I dealt with physical chronic pain for nearly 31 years daily. I'm almost 9 months pain free. But the reality of it is it's because in the last 12 years, I've given myself the space to start to feel in order to heal in each one of those other categories. Right. Which I wasn't even aware of at the time. And so that's also what happened for you. And I'm going to reflect back to you, my friend. I think the reason you didn't become a lawyer is because I think your communication, your impact, your level of influence, and your ability to guide and create space for others, you're meant for something a hell of a lot bigger than being a lawyer. Yeah. And I also believe that had you fallen in the lawyer game, the control element of you would have gone to the next level, because the shame and blame that's often associated with this concept that exists with many lawyers, it's really unbelievable, right? How much that even being in that profession can perpetuate some of these same shame cycles that you've lived with your whole life. So I view that as something that, you were in a different place to help many other people. And, a large part of your professional life has been in the mattress and sleep business.
Yeah.
And that's where most people don't pay attention, don't focus and prioritize, even though we spend 30% of our lives sleeping, right? Sleep is something I've studied now in myself for the last decade plus, because as it relates to nervous system regulation, to getting my subconscious mind to work on my behalf, to put myself in a place where my body can move and my soul can exist, right? Sleep and rest are a big part of the equation, but I didn't believe that for years. Yeah. I was one of those that pushed till the end of the day. I would do, and there was no ability to be. And so I'd love to know what put you on the path to be in that business. And what have you learned about the importance of rest, recovery, and sleep as a result of everything? Because I also know you have a book that's called Sleep Better. Yep. So give a little bit of insight into your knowledge and expertise being around that world for as long as you have.
Yeah. So I got into it as a youth. My late teen years up to graduation of high school was very, traumatic as well, because there's a whole other story of my mother and her marrying her husband. And you'll notice the exact wording I use.
I heard it.
Yeah. I think it was about as subtle as a 100-pound anvil, right? And it was for very good reason, but this show ain't about that.
I got you.
So and that's not out of bounds. We can bring it up if you want, but it was another traumatic thing that in and of itself, was awful. I'll just put a bow on it this way. My sisters and I and him and my mother were in the garage of our home, and he was leading the conversation about taking out my biological father.
Ooh.
Okay. So that's the bow, right? Like that.
Yep. I felt all of that in that exact moment.
Like how much has to lead
I can see all of it
to that point. Okay.
Yeah.
And so anyway, thankfully today my mother is away from him, and he has since passed away, and so that's good. But I got into high school. It was just a waste for me, really. Although I was very smart, graduated with a super high GPA, top 10% of the class. just there was nothing there for me. And all of that, of course, makes sense with what you all have learned and are listening to.
Yep.
So I get into building products, I get into construction, and really end up tearing up my knee in a really rough way. As life has its twists and turns, I was actually at an event, a John Maxwell simulcast live event at the church where I worked on, and blew that knee out hanging off a crane just 2 weeks ago. And so I got into the selling building products, right? Because I was very knowledgeable. I could apply them. I was able to sell things. I always kind of had some selling side hustles as a kid. And got into the corporate world, got chewed up and spit out, and said, I'm never getting back in the corporate world again. So I found an ad, sales/service rep, call Ed. And Ed Pine became my business partner. And Ed had a national accounts sales team in the mattress and furniture industry. And we had a tremendous run together. Ed and I actually just spoke to him, I guess it was last week, because we didn't commiserate about our Eagles loss this week. And I'm a diehard Eagles fan. And there's a good story there, a really good story there, if we want to get on it. But so, I mean, I basically get in the industry and I'm selling things to retailers, traveling the nation. I mean, there's a point I had 250,000 miles in the air one year and 50,000 miles on the ground. That's a lot of miles. Almost ruined my marriage, because my wife's like, yo, I married you. I didn't marry this thing you're doing. And by the way, I'm pregnant. And so God had a way of saying, all right, Jeff ain't going to fix it. We're going to fix it. November of 2003, Thanksgiving Day, the main company goes out of business, bankrupt. They're based in Canada. So we get the call as we're all breaking bread at our tables here in the States. So that ruined that day. But it was again, another lesson. And I should know these lessons about listening and paying attention. I'm more in tune today. So long-windedly, all of that career on the wholesale side, selling things to retailers, by 2011, 2010, I was tired. I made mistakes not being there for my oldest boy, Ethan. Missed a lot of his firsts. And I just decided I'm going to leverage my knowledge, get into retail, and be home and be able to see my kids. And I'm not dad now that goes to practice. I was just there last night. And I know the coaches look at it odd, because there's only 1 or 2 or 3 of us guys there. But man, I missed a lot, and I want to connect to it. And so that's how I got in. That's the journey.
Yeah. How old are your kids now?
15 and 19, soon to be 16 and 20.
What will be required for you to forgive yourself for what you were incapable of doing and showing up earlier in their lives?
I think for me, it's just knowing that you made some mistakes, and I feel I'm there, right?
Good.
My actions are there. I look for these moments. I just had a really great one with my youngest last night. We sat and watched his game film from Monday and had dinner. And if anybody's listening, you got teenagers at home, getting together for dinner is rough. And with both of our schedules, the oldest boy's working full time. He's in management with Chick-fil-A, which he's proud of. We're proud of, because we never saw that for him. He didn't see it, but he earned it. And I'm so proud of him for that. But yeah, I had that moment last night. So that was cool. That was really cool.
That's very cool.
Sit there, review that film. Cool. And, he's been, this season's been rough. He's a kid who has the talent and certainly has the football IQ to go far. I don't know if it's NFL far, but that's the goal we're pushing to. And so we're working to it. Every day it's a conversation, and it's a good conversation. Yeah. And so I'm really connected that way. And then connected with the oldest one in his Chick-fil-A career too.
That's good. I asked the question because I felt this slight guilt and shame and blame energy when you were talking about that period of time in your life. And I hear the actions that are allowing you to exist in this moment to give yourself forgiveness. And maybe I read it incorrectly, but I asked the question because I associate the same thing. I wasn't the husband and father that my wife and kids deserved, especially earlier in their first years. And I know that I was carrying some of that unconsciously until just about 3 to 6 months ago when I was given a gift. And there was a situation in our life that led to the reality that my kids articulated. They don't even remember having an angry dad. Right. And so that was one of those signs from the universe that I took to just allow myself to recognize that I did the best I could given the information that I had at that time in my life, and that my intent was always in the right place. It was just that my actions, because of my armor, couldn't necessarily always be in place.
Yeah.
And so, you had said a couple of times throughout your answers, and I'll just reflect this thing back as well to you. You've used the word should quite a bit, right? You said, I should know to pause and extract those lessons. Should is a shame-based word, my friend, because it implies whoever you are, or whatever you're doing, it's not good enough. So the second you even say that word in association to anything you would have done prior or could have done differently, you actually attach yourself to that low level frequency of shame, which is the lowest registerable frequency on Hawkins' scale. Okay. So just in terms of intentionality with language, that's something I wanted to give you, because I'm on a mission to try to remove the word should. Now, when you said you should be able to be with your kids, you should be able to do those things, you should be able to, I'm in full support. That's one of those appropriate uses of should. But as it relates to self, I know that I used to should all over myself, and it truly
turn of phrase. I love it.
It truly didn't allow me to escape it.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you to raise your awareness around the use of that word and try to replace it with could or would.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll help in your healing journey and where you're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Really do.
Cool.
I really do.
I see a sign behind you, and for those of you who aren't watching video, I'm gonna read it because it's important. It says, "When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you will be successful." That's something you've got on your wall behind you.
Yep.
What does success mean to you?
I phrase it a few different ways. It's for me, I guess it really comes down to that last name, Giagnocavo, meaning something to everyone around me. And it means good people. It means they give to their community. They're successful. They're successful, and you know it because of the good they give back. Not because they live in that neighborhood with the gate. Not because the sports cars per se, but that name has impact.
It may seem a little cheeky to ask this question, because I think that everyone or most people have some association to their lineage and the importance of their name. Why is it so important for you for your last name and your family name to be associated with impact?
Yeah, it's a reset. My sons are a reset on our family name. So I can. This is a good story if you want me to get into it.
Go for it, bro.
Yeah. So my great grandfather immigrated from Italy. My grandfather was 3 or 4. Okay. And when I say these, I say 3 or 4. These things are fuzzy because of all that happened and the lack of records, and it just didn't carry through. Of course. So my great grandfather immigrates to the U.S. and he wants to be a bachelor.
By the way, you also weren't alive then, so you don't have direct experience on the story. Let's just call that what it is.
Yeah. So my great grandfather immigrates. He wants to be a single man, and so he gets my great grandmother committed. They're Catholic faith, Italians, right? The only way you get divorced in the Catholic Church is insanity or adultery. So he couldn't prove that she cheated because she hadn't, but he could pay off a priest to say she was insane. And so he has her committed. That's what we understand.
Wow.
My grandfather, and I forget if it's eight total or 10 total siblings. I forget. And my dad and my uncles tell me, and I should just write the darn thing down, but he was one of many kids. They get orphaned off.
You just showed it on yourself again, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your story twice.
I'm writing that down. Should've. That'll give me the reminder here to start working on that. So he's orphaned off, and all the brothers and sisters are orphaned off. He ends up on a farm in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, and is basically ends up being a child slave laborer.
Wow.
Gets to this day, there's still, I love the Amish community for their community, but there is also issue with how they view and treat their children, how they view and treat animals, especially dogs. I do business in Lancaster County, and it's the puppy mill USA, right? So I have a lot of respect in one ways, and then I'm like, man, you all need to really think about how you act in some other ways. Just in the last couple of weeks, we had a 4-year-old kid in Lancaster County die from injuries while harvesting from some implement or another. So my grandfather, gets an 8th grade education, and then stays a couple more years and runs away at 16. Through the church, tracks down his mother, my great grandmother, and finds her and gets her out of the insane asylum. And then they live together. She dies subsequently in a house fire. And so my grandfather had a lot of trauma, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't call it that back then, but that's what it was. And so he was an interesting man that really, I channel him in that impact thing, because here's an Italian who had what he had, who married a Mennonite girl, not a shocker. So he combines these cultures and still does good. And there's pictures that I have of him in the early 60s. He was selling books, and he would do buy a book, give a book to your library. No, buy a book, give a book to a library. And if you don't emphasize A in a library, everybody just thinks it's my library. Well, the library was the inner city libraries, because for him, knowledge and reading was so important. Subsequently, one of my uncles is a book publisher, very successful book publisher. And so that's like for me, that's why impact's important, because he was living it. He was doing it. I've got the pictures. I've got the pictures of the book bus that he drove, where he did the buy a book, give a book. And he'd take those books into the inner city. Now, if he would have said that in that time, it might have been very different. Mm-hmm. He brought kids out to his farm from the city. He'd go into the city to, minister through both faith and educationally. And, all that said, he probably wasn't the best family man. There's a lot of issues there. Like,
How could he have been? How could he have been?
Right. Exactly.
Just given what you outlined, how could he have been? He did the best he could, right?
Exactly. And so to me, that impact's important, and why my name is important, because out of all my aunts and uncles, my father has 3 brothers and 3 sisters, so 7 kids. My sons are the only blood.
Oh, wow.
To carry that name forward. Now, that's not to speak negatively about my cousins. There's some adopted cousins. There's some cousins who were adopted from Guatemala. One of my uncles does incredible mission work down there today still. Actually, I think he just got back. He wasn't able to get in because there's some turmoil there, some political issues there. But my sons are blood. And so it means nothing and it means everything at the same time.
Yeah.
For me, it's important, and it's the mission I'm on, but it doesn't make my cousins bad. It doesn't make my aunts and uncles bad. It's just the mission that I'm on. And if I honor what I'm saying about impact, then all is okay with that statement.
Yeah. I deeply identify with a lot of what you just said, right? I mean, I don't know as far back as my great grandparents, but I can look at the trauma that's 3 generations back in our world, and also the importance and understanding of what was associated with my last name historically, right? And what we are currently trying to do. And my son is the only male in this line of Bogarts, right? And so it'll be interesting to see, because it's one of those kind of dwindling impacts, but it's also like, what impact can we leave in the time that we have? You truly have done a remarkable job opening yourself to understand empathy, compassion, the human experience, emotions, the impact of trauma, right? And I know that you really have, as a leader in your life, facilitated and held space for so many people, and a lot of your individuals to, again, have space for your teams or other employees or structures within it to, again, heal, right? Heal and grow so that we can become the best versions of ourselves. You've got a new book that you are recently releasing, or you recently released. I don't know what the date was on it, but The Space for Leadership. That's what I thought. I thought it'd come out in August, because that was around the time I think you were on our live. So, my friend, give us a little bit of insight into your experience professionally that led you down this path to really lean into empathetic leadership and the transformative power that's associated with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to really work to not should myself at this juncture.
Thanks for leaning into that challenge, bro.
So, when I speak, I use a lot of my own experiences, because while I've found success along the way, it's been messy. There's been a path, a swath cut. One of those cuts was 65 miles an hour leaving the store on a Labor Day Monday, out of the parking lot, Tokyo Drift style, which, if you were to look up Gardner's Mattress and More, not because I want to sell you something, but if you were to look it up, 830 Plaza Boulevard, Lancaster, PA, you'd see from the parking lot to the street to hit 65 miles an hour, you're out of your mind. And I was very upset. And the conflict is not really important to the story. It's just that it happened. And, it was me in that moment not being the leader I wanted to be. And I use a lot of those examples. I share a lot of those examples in the book. I share my abuse in the book. This is something that 1 in 6 men have gone through. 1 in 4 women have. And maybe it's not childhood sexual abuse, maybe it's assault. But that, so that's a big bucket, right? But, I'm not going to, like I said earlier, I'm not going to define, your abuse happened as an adult, so it's not that bad. That's why I always preface it. And so for me, it's really important that I feel that I've been given the strength and the shoulders to carry this journey and to help other leaders understand. So I'll step back to the 65 mile an hour touch point in the story. So that was a new cut ripping into that old wound and that old scar, that conflict, right? And that's how I greeted it. And I talk about that specifically in the book, that the things people do around you, they didn't wake up in that day to say, I'm going to get Jeff. I'm going to get Brian. I'm going to get you, the listener. It's like you're in the left lane on the highway. Like a person that's going slow has their own clash, their own issue in the day. They didn't scheme it to wake up at 6:15 to meet you on the highway at 6:53. The coffee person wasn't in cahoots to get them their drink quick at Starbucks. It's just where our paths collide. And we got to be grounded enough to know that the people around us, they're not doing this stuff to us. Maybe they're being put in front of us for us, like the truck example. Right? And so that cut in that conflict, I go and internally deep down, this is my control being taken away. I'm not going to lash out at you, but I'm going to get in my car and drive like a maniac, and could have potentially killed somebody that afternoon, drifting, basically, squealing sideways out of the parking lot. Because I had to show you I was mad, but I didn't want to show you why I was mad.
Well, and here's the reality. Anger is armor, right?
Didn't want to
it's coming from that self-preservation place.
And Yeah. 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 So, I highlight that, and I share other stories on your show, and other times I talk in my own show. And, you know, there's always these clashes that exist. We're always going to bang into each other, but it's how we respond to it that really, really matters. But if we go into our day understanding that people around us, there's a clash that exists in their life between their loved ones. There's a clash that exists between you, the work you do together, and we're still getting the lion's share of their time. So imagine being an employer or a leader that's got somebody on your team who just found out their kid um, did something really bad at school. And this is actually something that's
protect the other people's stories. Yeah, I
got
got
my life now. And I'll just say it as far as that, because I want to be super respectful. Yeah. But imagine that person who's really a great person.
Yeah.
But sometimes teenagers do really dumb things. And this has been on their mind. It's weighing on them. It's weighing on them mentally and emotionally, physically, maybe financially. And they're obviously don't want to talk about it because it's embarrassing. It's hard. There might be legal ramifications to follow. Who knows, right? There's all these things. But they still got to come to you and serve the 8 hours you've got for them. And so I just challenge people to recognize that, and that you've got humans around you. You don't got robots.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're coming close. You just want robots. I'm sure you work hard enough, you'll get them.
I think that's about prioritizing people before profits as well, and recognizing that that's truly what it's all about.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And so for me, the underlying theme of the book is that it's like, you got to create that space for people to come in and around you. The shield you carry goes above your head for protection. In some epic battle movie, when the antagonist is against the protagonist, right? It's that sword clashing down on the shield, and it's that turning point in the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to have an epic movie or an epic moment.
Yeah.
Just be that person.
I love how you move through the world
around you
on so many levels. There's such deep alignment with you and I and the way we view things. And so ownership is one of the pillars that we teach, which you really leaned into. And it's getting people to recognize, or at least put themselves in a position where they can take the level of ownership required to assume that everything that's happened in their life is a result of them. I do believe that everything begins and ends with us, but that's part of the self-preservation and the protection. When we have things taken from us or have things done to us, we learn to hide behind that shield and that armor. And the second we protect ourselves, we guarantee that we're going to disconnect ourselves from the very things that we want, which is to be seen and understood and connected at the deepest level. Right. And it doesn't allow us to have these safe, protected spaces, which is why we teach this concept of becoming a protector and connector, to do what you just described. Because we as leaders, I believe, if we can exist with vulnerability, authenticity, and, oh, by the way, emotion, because human connection wouldn't exist without emotion, right? It allows us to actually see people for who they are within their unique human experience that, by the way, is also not that unique, right? We all experience the same things. We all have these moments of trigger, and 99% of the time, we're not reacting to what's right in front of us. We're reacting to the cellular memory from the trash from our past. And you so beautifully articulated that, but it's like, how do we allow people to have that space? I'm so happy that you're not only in that area where you're teaching others to do it, you're living and you're the example of it in so many cases. I really appreciate that. I'm curious, my friend, where, if you are conscious to it, are you still protecting yourself?
When I talk about, like I memorialized my childhood in the sexual abuse that happened, but you just heard the pause there, right? I put it in words. And in January of 23, I was at an event where I said to the 60 people in the room, I'm like, I'm at a point in my life where if I don't get this out now, it's never coming out. Like there was never going to be another moment in time in my life where I was perfectly aligned with the right people to hear my story. So I stepped into it. And then I knew I had to put it in words in the book. And so I think still some of that protection, and you touched on it, like about the details the details of the abuse. And that's going to be difficult for me to share. I can say that right now. You know, I touched on the birthday thing, but I think that's where I'm still kind of there. Like those moments where I still hedge. But then I remember I put it right here in print, and so it's okay. And again, it's like, you don't need to hedge, because it ain't going to be those moments in that basement. It's not going to be that place, you know. And even if there is negativity throwing back, and I've had a little bit so far, and I'll be truthful, there's a couple weeks that threw me off my game since I launched the book. You know, because it's funny, we give credence and power.
I like that statement. I've not heard that. I've not heard it said that way before. That was beautiful.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's silly, right? But I'll stand here and say it. It knocked me off my game about 3 weeks post launch. You get some of those negative comments, those anonymous DMs. You know, I'll share. It was, oh, you're just making this up to sell a book. Like first of all, if you know anything about selling books, you don't make that much money with it. Like
books are not typically money making,
and a few different revenue streams. Not. This is a net loss. Yeah, this is a net loss to date, and still is, especially when I throw in my time. But like, you know, it's like, man, what and so it took me a few days to sit with that. But then I realized, you know, that person's probably dealing with the same thing I am, and they can't come to grips with it. So I just replied back and I said, you know, I think I can appreciate where you're coming from. If you want a copy of my book for free, I'll mail you one.
By the way, that's a beautiful response.
I wish you nothing but peace. And that was
I often look at naysayers and haters and, you know, those comments, wherever they're coming from. And my whole goal is just to hold space for them as well. Honor and accept and then thank them for sharing their truth, their perspective, right? And then giving grace as well as diffusing any of the potential conflict. Because once you reach a point in your life where you realize you don't need to defend from others in that way, right? You get to do exactly what you were talking about before, demonstrating empathetic leadership, which is, hey, let me, instead of reacting to you and telling you like, who are you to tell me that my truth isn't real? Can I just share my book with you? And I'm willing to pay for it. I'll give it to you for free, just as a gift, right? That's a beautiful demonstration of even what you've been talking about this whole time.
Right.
I, like you, enjoy some really, really good windshield time. And I enjoy windshield time with myself. I enjoy windshield time with a handful of people in my world, like my wife and my kids. And it looks different in each one of those environments. So what does windshield time mean for you? And what kind of freedom and expression do you get on a long drive?
It's where I do some of my best thinking, like my mind, it unlocks. I'd imagine it's a similar feeling for that marathon runner, you know, when you're kind of in that zone past the first dozen or so miles. It's like, all right, now I'm flowing. I'm into this thing. Just before you hit that last mile where it's like, all right, oh yeah, this one is uphill. We got to push, right? You're in that zone, that flow state, to use an often used term. You know, it's escape. It's escape. There's nothing like it. I mean, when I was on the road back on the wholesale side of my career in the industry I'm in, I loved that part, man. That was the best part. Getting up, I would often leave the house 4 or 5 a.m. to get to some of my first dealers for early meetings. And, you know, seeing the sunrise on the horizon was awesome. Like, you have to be able to take stuff like that in life, because it's good and it fills your soul in a way that if you don't do it, you can't know, but you should. You know, I've been known to have a couple full-on rock concerts, jamming out to a tune or two.
What's your favorite music to listen to when you're driving?
You know, so I'll groove that way. It's just, you know, right now I'm kind of all over the place, and I know that's a cop out, but right now, my Spotify AI DJ is playing a lot of Aaron Lewis acoustic, not the Stained stuff, but some of that old school Waylon, Johnny Cash, on up through Tyler Childers. Who else is in there now? You got some of the regular country guys flow in because of the algorithm every now and then. Cody Jinks, though, is probably my favorite. Because I think we share a path, like we share a similar past. He was in a heavy metal band. He made it. I was in a heavy metal band. I didn't. And now at this point in his life, we're like the same age, and we're both kind of like the same guy. Like to hunt, like to be in trucks, like to wear cowboy boots. I really connect with his words, right? There's some great lyrics and great songs that he's got. There's one song.
I love that.
Just went right
I'll share a little story
from
me, because as you were talking about that, it took me back to a moment in my life that I haven't thought about or shared in a long time. So I went to a school that was in Southern California. I live in Phoenix, and it was about a 4-hour drive, right? And I made that drive multiple times a year. And it was, to me, the drive back and forth, it was 4 hours, absolute silence. I could listen to whatever. There was about a 18-month window in there where a lot of my buddies in college were unbelievable musicians in multiple different areas. But there was a really unique subset of my buddies that were just unbelievable freestyle rappers. Like unbelievable lyrics would just come to them. And I'm good and creative with words, but I wasn't open to my ability to be as creative to words back then, but I wanted to like be a part of that. And so what would I do? I would literally just play beats, like tracks of music without any words on it. And I would, for 4 hours, freestyle rap while I was doing it. And it was such a creative expression and process. And did I ever show anybody? No. Like, did I ever do that in front of anybody? No.
Nice.
It wasn't about anybody. It was about me and what it allowed in terms of what you just said. It was an escape. It was freedom. It was a different kind of an expression. But I had forgotten that I did that for about 18 months. Every time I drove for about 4 hours, I'd just freestyle rap out loud to these beats. And I don't even know what I was talking about, but it was something that was really, really fun and special. And
yeah,
I agree. I think music has a really interesting way of transporting us to places, allowing us to feel and experience things that maybe we haven't. And it's a literal vibration through our body. I mean, that's what's beautiful about it, right? We feel it, we experience it, it's real. And that's why we bond to it so much.
Yeah.
You know, as we're starting to wrap this discussion, my friend, I one of the questions that I did want to get into, was, and I don't even know if you remember what you wrote down on our intake form. So I'm not going to prime you at all. I'm just going to ask you the question. What's your biggest problem in life or business right now?
Yeah. For now, it is, and this probably is different from the intake form, but I said earlier, it's about like that rediscovery, figuring me out where I go with this message and what I do. And for me, the cerebral thinking brain is, I got to reach out to 40 or 50 people a week. I've got to create this. I have to do that. They got to have a brochure in their hand. Mm-hmm. And I'm being challenged to really just be in the moment. And like opportunities like this, see them. Opportunities, I'll share this, and I in no way I mean to offend anybody in this, but I got my hair cut last night, which actually I find
it looks really good, bro. Like it looks really good.
I think that morning, right? So like we got a thing, man. Like,
all right, deal.
Yeah, if we ever meet,
let's go.
Like when we meet in person, we got to both get fresh haircuts, or maybe get them together. Like barbershop, get the cameras out, like do a podcast from the barber chair. So I got in this path of going to Great Clips. I've been seeing a barber, but I couldn't do barber chairs because of my whole leg and knee rebuild I had earlier in the year. I need to get back. I think I'm there now. So I share it this way about finding these moments. And I preface that I don't wish to offend anybody. So my hairstylist is obviously somebody, and when I say obviously, it's obviously going through gender dysmorphia. You know, this is a man who wishes to be a woman and wants to be a woman.
Okay.
And when I say obvious, I mean, there was a lot of makeup. And, you know, so I share this moment because they're like, so what do you do? And so I'm like, you know, I always kind of break it down in stages. I'm like, well, I'm a consultant. Right?
What the fuck does that even mean? Right? Like, that's what they're like, what does that mean? I'm a consultant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So like, okay, if you're that interested, then I give you a little other piece and another piece and another piece. And basically, I think I was placed to speak to this person last night about trauma, about hiding in plain sight. And by the end of it, gave this person a hug. Big old redneck guy. Showed up in his son's, like, my truck's in the shop right now, so I'm driving my kid's 95 F-150. Got my boots on. Looked like I might have just come out of the woods, right? And basically I said, yeah, I'm a consultant, but I'm kind of shifting the business of my own personal business. And so that opened up more question. And you know, when they asked, I was kind of ready to just say, yeah, I got a retail mattress store. Like, nope, here's the challenge. You've been asking for this. Respect the answer. This is you were put in front of this person. There were 3 other stylists there who were open, sitting in their chairs, not doing anything, talking.
Of course.
25 minutes before close. That person was put in front of me.
You gave me chills through that entire answer.
What I had to say.
Your heart is beautiful, my friend. I'm going to go as far to say, I love who you are. I love you, man. It's incredible to witness even what you just described. And to your point, exactly. I know for a fact that that is a polarizing topic for a variety of people. Right. But what did you just do? You just demonstrated everything you've supported and talked about through this entire show by viewing that person as a person, by recognizing the human that was on the other side of it, and recognizing that our collective wisdom in our stories can all help each other. And you put that into motion real time. As we wrap here, you've said so many profound things. You've been very, very clear, very vulnerable, very authentic. And I want to thank you for all that again. I have a feeling that a lot of it's consistent with the things that we've talked about. But if you had a closing message that you wanted everybody in this show to hear, what would it be?
So I've been signing books, and I paused, not because you stumped me. I've just been practicing, working to practice. I said, respecting the answer. There's a good joke about that I'll tell after this. So I've been signing books. If there's not like a personal one-on-one connection in person, I've been putting a little message in there. Your pain is your strength. That strength can be superpower. That superpower can be purpose. And now maybe that means you just recall and realize in your day, it's not that basement. It's not that whatever for you.
Simple.
And that's all I would ask you to do.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.